104.5, the team, your home for New York Yankees baseball. And thanks to our friends at Techie's Fire and Water Restoration. Your best way back to normal. Visit them online, tefirewater.com. We are joined by Buster Olney. Buster, the Zach Britton trade goes through. Is that the arm they needed?
That's not the most important question. The most important question, are you and Gauze on speaking terms after that? Okay? Given your particular sentiments that you have, respective sentiments, Yankees and Orioles, are you guys speaking to each other?
Yeah, because I got to be honest with you, I think I like this trade better than I like the Machado trade for the Orioles.
Well, and I tell you what, you talk to folks with other teams, and they thought that the Orioles did really well. Now, that all said, with these trades being made, Gauze's Orioles probably won't be heard from until sometime when, in the next century. I mean, let's face it. Look, I think that for the Yankees, it makes sense because I don't think that they necessarily, to this point, have identified a difference maker in the trade market that might be accessible to them. They're not getting Bumgarner. They're not getting DeGrom. They might wind up, getting J-Happ maybe by the end of the day. But when you see how he struggled against the Red Sox, against some of the American League contenders, you have your doubts about that. But now if you're the Yankees, and because you thought, well, if we can't upgrade the rotation in a big way, if you make your bullpen so deep that you could almost count on a bullpen game in the postseason, game 2 of a 7-game series where you kind of plan that after Luis Severino goes game 1, game 2, you roll out 6 relievers, and then you have the off day on the day after that. You can do something there. Their bullpen is so deep. It's the deepest bullpen I've ever seen since they covered baseball. And if he gets his stuff back, and there's a lot of indication, as you guys know, that he's gotten better. His velocity's improved over the last month. The movement on his fastball has improved over the last month. And on top of that, you keep him out of the hands of the Astros in particular and the Red Sox and any other contender. It's a plus for the Yankees. You respect the fact that they paid the extra 10, 15% that they needed to do to get this deal done.
The next time the Baltimore Orioles may be irrelevant, LeBron James Jr. might be in the NBA. But
I was looking for the right comp. I was trying to think of a junior, and that is a great one.
Buster, you touched on this idea that maybe we might see 6 relievers in a playoff game. Doesn't that put a little bit of pressure on Aaron Boone? Because this seems like a new style if they decide to do something like that.
Well, yeah, you're right. It's not the Tampa Bay Rays. And I heard Tony La Russa do an interview, the Hall of Fame manager, and talk about you're seeing a lot of teams use that strategy. He said the problem with it is that if one reliever has a bad day, the whole thing can unravel. Here's the great thing from the Yankees' perspective. Their relievers probably have less of a chance to unravel than anybody else's group because they're so deep. And if a Britton or a David Robertson or a Chad Green is having a bad day, then you can go to somebody else. It is amazing how deep that group is.
Buster Olney with us right now, 104.5 the team. Buster, you said DeGrom's not going to get traded to the Yankees. At this point, with the Cespedes news being what it is, why not just trade everybody who's over like 28?
I feel like we had this conversation 2 months ago. Like, I don't get it that the Mets have not aggressively gone out and shopped DeGrom. I mean, I just talked about how thin the starting pitching market is. In a soft market, you put DeGrom out there, it would be like a Lamborghini among a bunch of Chevys and Fords, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, everybody who had a serious farm system, the Braves, the Brewers, the Yankees, obviously, potentially would be frothing to put together offers for DeGrom. And I don't know why, if you're the Mets, you wouldn't have tried to take advantage of it. Now, I do think it should be in the past tense because at this point, like that, a deal of that magnitude really should take weeks and weeks of preparation where you go through all the farm systems of all the interested teams and make sure you choose the right guys. But it doesn't seem like they've done any of that. And if you haven't done the groundwork, you probably would be better off just punting. I don't get how the Mets have handled this. Like, I don't get a lot of things they've done.
That plus the Yoenis Cespedes situation, the injury that may derail the rest of his season. But you've heard for some ESPN people that it may be a long time before we see Cespedes.
Well, absolutely. And Stefan Bell, who's our injury expert, wrote a great piece on Sunday, posted on Sunday night, about how when you have his type of injuries, and this is before the Mets announced the type of specifics of the injury that he has, where you have calcification in both tendons, which means in the surgery that he's having, guys, they literally could have to go in there and try to remove bone around the tendons, the Achilles tendons. And what that could mean is that, it might be debrided, there might be some complications. And she mentioned in the piece she did, there's a wide range of time that he could miss. So when Cespedes mentioned to reporters last Friday, 8 to 10 months, and then the Mets, when they made the official announcement on Wednesday, I think they were being deferential to Cespedes because they echoed his 8 to 10 months. It could actually be something closer to 12 to 16 months, which means not only is he going to miss the rest of this year, but he may well miss the rest of all of 2019, which would leave him 1 year on that 4-year deal that he signed with the Mets. And on top of that, moving forward, it's a legitimate question whether or not he can be a viable National League player playing in the outfield without access to the DH.
Wow. Buster Olney with us right now. So, Buster, the Mets are a mess, but
a mess,
just absolute mess. I'm going to do them a favor and go back to the Yankees for a hot second. Are they done? Are they going to add more arms?
Yeah, I think they'll add a starting pitcher, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're the team that lands J. Happ. He makes a lot of sense because he's an upgrade over some of the young pitchers that they've been using. He creates another safety net for them. He does have a low heart rate. He's pitched in the American League East, so I wouldn't be surprised they get him. And I also think that they will make it a priority in the next, and maybe it's part of the same deal, where they need to add some catching. Because Gary Sanchez, they expect that he's going to be okay when he comes back, which is going to be at the beginning of September from this groin injury. But he's been bad enough this year and has had enough physical problems where I suspect that they will want to make sure they get a safety net in place as a catcher because, it's one thing to lose Gary Sanchez, but if Austin Romine takes a foul tip off his hand, breaks a finger today, they would be in deep, which is why I think you'll see them add a catcher as well before Tuesday, 4 o'clock.
Buster, was the lack of hustle an injury thing, or is there something worse going on with Sanchez, like a lack of heart kind of thing?
Yeah, it was definitely a lack of effort. And yes, he is injured, and I believe that. I haven't talked to a number of people about the situation. When he went for the MRI, it showed up on the MRI that he was hurt, so they're giving him time to get ready. But I also think probably as he's gone on the DL that the message to him was, look, get healthy, also get in better shape. He's a big dude, and I think they feel like that he'd be better off losing some weight so he could move around. And Aaron Boone was pretty honest in talking with reporters, I thought, on Tuesday, the day after what happened in that game. Anybody who watched the videotape of it, regardless of whether or not he was hurt, it was clear that when he recognized that he had a chance in that ninth inning at bat to beat the throw to first base, he suddenly sped up, which raises the question, why wasn't he running as hard as he could out of the box? And I talked about this on a podcast that we do this week. When you talk to catchers, they have, and Levack, you've been around a lot of players, there's a particular personality type. Like, they are really invested. You talk to Christian Vasquez, the Red Sox, about catching, and it's like he's talking about religion. The Molinas are the same way. Jorge Posada was not a great defensive catcher, but man, he was into it and loved the work and loved being a catcher. Gary Sanchez kind of puts off the vibe that that's not necessarily the case, and I do think moving forward he needs to understand that if you don't feel like he's got that motor going right now and when he catches, he needs to get it. And I suspect that probably was part of the message to him.
It's weird because one of the reasons that Aaron Boone has this job right now is Girardi's relationship with Sanchez. Like, are we doing a little hindsight thing now, looking back at Joe Girardi and going, maybe there was something else going on there, not necessarily an issue with Sanchez? Because just what you just pointed out, he doesn't look like he loves to catch.
Well, if that was the only player with whom his communication stuff was potential issue, then I would agree with you, but it wasn't. It was pretty clear. Okay. And look, I think part of the reason why you didn't have a bunch of players spilling out of the woodwork with Joe Girardi's stories was because they really liked Joe. Like, everyone knows, Joe Girardi is a good person. He's a good guy. No one's wishing him ill, but it's also fairly apparent that, there was some communication stuff going on. And Gary Sanchez has a history. When he was in the minor leagues, there were times when they felt like they had to light a fire under him. I talked to Gary last year about a turning point for him, and I heard this from some of his instructors in the minor leagues, that when his daughter was born, he came back from that event, his first child, and said, okay, let's go to work. And he was into it. and put in the extra time and did all that. I can't tell you whether or not that's still going on, but I guess it's sort of like your furnace. When the pilot light goes out, it does feel like they have to relight that.
Buster, this weekend, a fantastic piece is coming out on ESPN. I know you worked on this, the Mike Trout piece that's going to be on E60.
I'm excited about it. Been working on it for 18 months. It was 4 years ago on a Father's Day that I asked Trout, trying to get an anecdote about his dad, Jeff, who played 4 years in the minor leagues, and said, hey, tell me about the instruction you get from your dad. This is the world's best baseball player, and his dad played 4 years in the minor leagues, so I just made the assumption that, his dad was texting him thoughts on his swing and his approach, because we've all seen the helicopter parents. Yeah. He's looked at me and goes, none. He doesn't do anything. He stopped coaching me when I was 14 years old. And I said, really? Like, he doesn't tell you at the end of the game, like, hey, I thought your elbow up or whatever it was? And he goes, no. He said, yeah, my parents and I text before and after every game. He said, but it's got nothing to do with baseball. And that really intrigued me. And so the last 18 months we worked on this. We got a lot of access from he and his family, to the point that when Rob Manfred had his fairly pointed comments about Mike Trout at the All-Star game and how he felt like if Mike Trout wants to market himself, he needs to participate in that, I was kind of chuckling, because we had gotten so much access from Mike and his family and working on this project that I knew firsthand that wasn't necessarily the case.
And how many times during this E60 are you going to make me mad by comparing him to Mickey Mantle?
Once.
Oh, just, okay. All right. I can take once. No, I mean, this is super interesting because he is not the most outspoken guy. So,
people, and sorry to interrupt, folks in my industry say all the time to me, like, oh, yeah, Trout's boring. And I'm like, he's not boring. He's happy. He's a happy person. He plays as hard as he can every game. Teammates love him. He's incredibly sincere. He's incredibly earnest. He's an incredible player. Like, what more do we want?
Well, apparently a Pepsi commercial now and again, Buster. I mean, I don't think it's asking too much.
You know what? I think part of that is on the Angels to get to the postseason, because I have thought of that comparison with Derek Jeter. I mean, Mike Trout, if you compare the beginning of his career with Jeter, there's no question. Trout is, like, arguably the greatest player. He turns 27 in a couple weeks. Up till his age 27 season, he's the greatest player in the history of baseball. But he has not had the October stage the way that Derek did.
Oh, man, I can't. I am excited about that. And, of course, baseball going strong. So you're traveling again this weekend. Where will we see you popping up?
I am going to St. Louis. Got the Cubs and the Cardinals, and we'll have the phone on because of all the trade stuff going on.
Were you shocked that you didn't have to bail me out on Saturday at the Yankees-Mets game?
Well, you know what? I slipped the security chief a 20 like you asked me to, and I'm glad it worked for you.
So it's nice. It's like you had that access for me. That's all. You're there for me, and I appreciate it.
He texted me and said, "Can you please speak to some people? Do you know a lawyer? Do you got $100 in your pocket to bail me out?" And I came through.
Yeah, right. And the best part was I was still texting English at that point. I was only a couple beers in, so it was a good thing. Buster, man.
And I told him, I said, "Look, I know he's behind bars." But if he asks for another six-pack, just give it to him. It'll keep him happy.
See, you get me. Buster, man, you're the best. We love you.
See you guys.
Later.